Today we're going to be taking a look at another inexpensive microphone from FiFine, but this time it's a USB condenser microphone. Let's get undone. Gerald Undone. He's crazy. What is happening, everybody? I'm Gerald Undone, and today we've got another microphone from FiFine. This one is their K670 USB condenser microphone. I think this one's going after the Blue Yeti microphones. USB plug and play, and they're probably targeted after, podcast streamers, that kind of thing, right into the computer, just using them that way. Quick disclaimer, as always, this is not a sponsored video. Although I was sent this microphone for free to review, I was not paid to make this video, so the opinions and thoughts that I'm about to give are my own. So let's do a quick unboxing, and then we'll get into a little bit of the features, and we'll see how it sounds. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the microphone. Fit and finish wise, it's quite nice. Obviously we need to note that these are inexpensive microphones, the FiFine ones. This one is like $50 US and $60 Canadian. So it's, 2 to 3 times cheaper than we'll call it the similar Blue microphone that it might be going after, depending on the sale going on the Blue microphone at the time. The Yeti is anywhere from $130 to $190 Canadian, depending on its price when you're looking at it. Now, I'm not saying that this is as good as the Blue Yeti. I don't have one side by side to compare it to, but I do think that the fit and finish is quite nice. Small complaints: the thread for the locking screw here left a little bit to be desired. If you loosen it off too much, it falls out, and it's a little bit hard to get back in. Normally, some like higher quality ones will have a little bit more leeway there. And the actual mount that goes on is plastic, but the base and the extension bars, they're all metal, and the microphone has a decent weight to it, and the diaphragm size is quite nice as well, and there's a little LED inside that casts a blue light, which it's kind of cool. Volume knob on the front, and there's a headphone port on the back, so when you plug this into your computer, it'll show up as 2 devices. This will show up as an output device, as speakers or something, and then the microphone will obviously show up as an input device. The USB cable is quite nice as well. It's thick and seems well shielded, good connections, and it has a nice aesthetic. Overall, I like the way that this microphone looks. The shroud on top here is quite nice and tightly woven, and it also appears to be of metal construction. Now, speaking of the volume knob, there was a little bit of finesse that I was required to do when I was playing with the levels earlier to get it to sound good. I don't think that the amplification of this microphone is that great. I think that there's definitely some gain issues. So I'm using a Windows PC, and when there's 2 volume controls, obviously, right? In Windows, you're going to have the slider of 0 to 100 of the input gain, I guess, on the microphone, and then there's obviously the volume knob itself. If you set the Windows volume to 100, almost anywhere that you place this volume knob, it's going to sound bad. It's going to sound over-amplified, where everything is distorted. It's not really clipping. There seems to be like peak prevention or something in the microphone, because it never seems to exceed a certain level of like -3, -2, but it sounds heavily compressed in order to achieve that peak reduction. So don't set it to 100 in the computer. Set it to somewhere between, I don't know, high 80s and low 90s seem to be okay, and then you can have a little bit more play with the knob. If you want to put the knob all the way up, then obviously you should set the computer even lower. This is what you do with pretty much any time that you're running multiple devices with volume. You want to have your best device at the higher volume and then roll it off from there. But in the case of a USB device, it's a little bit harder to tell necessarily where your best amplification is going to come from. So just try to find a balance of maybe you run everything at 70% or something like that until you get the volume that you want. But no hundreds. Hundreds are no good. So I found for me that running it at 89 in Windows and putting the knob at about 12 o'clock, which is like right in the middle, seemed to produce a reasonably okay sound. And then it's much easier to just sort of boost it and normalize it in post to keep the cleaner sound, because there's nothing you can really do with that distorted, compressed sound afterwards. So you're better off recording a little bit lower volume and then boosting it up afterwards. For those of you that are going to stream or something like that with that, I would recommend that you do the same things I just said, but then use OBS or something like that to add a little bit of software gain rather than using the knob and turning it all the way up, because I think that your voice it'll go to that weird, distorted, clipping sound. Okay, let's give it a little bit of a listen. So I'm going to place it right here in front of me on the desk, and I've got the, as you can see, it tilted back a little bit, so the diaphragm is pointing pretty much up right around here. And so I'm just going to put it in this position, and I'm going to talk at the camera. We are now recording from the K670 USB microphone from FiFine, and while we're doing a little audio test here, let's go over some of the specs. So the frequency response is listed to be between 50 Hertz and 15,000 Hertz, and the diaphragm is a 16 millimeter diaphragm, which I think is more like, I guess that would be considered sort of a large diaphragm, but it's kind of, it's like a medium plus. What else? The USB cable is just over 6 feet, I think, 6.5 feet. Which is decent length for the cable, I find. The weight of the device is about a pound, so like I said, it feels substantial. It comes with a 3-piece detachable stand, which is all metal, like I was saying. What else do I have listed here? You can adjust the angle of the microphone sort of in whichever way you want, so it'll flip completely over on the stand, so you can have an upside down position. And they give you two, I noticed in the unboxing I was trying to figure it out, but they give you two like mounts, the thing that screws onto the pole, and then you put the microphone in there. There's two of those, because that's like the only sort of, you know, weaker looking plastic part, so that's probably the most likely thing to break, so they give you two of those. Now let's just take a minute here and listen for a bit of silence and see what the noise level is like. Okay, now let's pull this clip open in Audition. We'll inspect the sound signal, and then we'll maybe make a little bit of adjustments to it with maybe an EQ or a compressor, some noise reduction or something. See if we can clean it up a little bit, but we'll see how it sounds. And for a bit of silence and see what the noise level is like. Silence and see what the noise level is like, because that's like the only sort of, you know, weaker looking plastic part, so that's probably the most likely thing to break, so they give you two of those. Let's just take a minute here and listen for a bit of silence and see what the noise level is like. The USB cable is just over 6 feet, I think, 6.5 feet. Okay, so we're back now, and this is back to my regular microphone. So overall, you know, I'm pretty impressed for the price. I think it sounds pretty decent. I didn't think that it needed a lot of work in order to make it sound great. I might, you know, put a little bit of noise reduction and obviously use a compressor if I was to record this myself. But I was pleasantly surprised how it handled. I've used much more expensive mics that I thought had a worse noise floor or handled, you know, transients and stuff like that worse than this mic did. So I think it's pretty good for $50 US, $60 Canadian. I think that that's a pretty decent price point, an entry level for somebody who wants to do a little bit of recording or do some like live stuff, podcast streaming, that kind of thing. I think it's a decent solution at the price point. And like I said, I was pleasantly surprised with the fit and finish and the build quality. I like the way that it looks, and sound-wise, I think as long as you manage your levels. So like I said, in the computer, you can't put that all the way up to 100, and you definitely can't put the knob all the way up to 100. You got to boost it in post. That's the only drawback, really, is the amplification is not great on this unit. Other than that, I think it's pretty decent. That's going to be it for me. I hope you found this video helpful, or at least entertaining. And if you did, make sure you leave it the old thumbs up and consider subscribing if you haven't already. But if you did not find this video helpful or entertaining, feel free to hit the dislike button twice. All right, I'm done.